We will use paint and a palette knife to experiment with mixing paint. I'm starting with titanium white and Mars black and some gel medium. When I squeeze the paint tube to get the paint out, it's at about a 45-degree angle, but when I finish squeezing it and I want to lift off of the palette paper, make sure that you're lifting off at a perpendicular angle, so 90 degrees. And that's just so you clean off the top of your tube so that you don't have a big blob of paint up there. When acrylic paint dries, it acts like a glue. It's basically like dried plastic. And so you don't want to put your cap on with tons of globby paint all over the top. You just want to, if you need to, use a paper towel and clean it off, but you just do the perpendicular thing each time, get into that habit. And then I just took my small palette knife because I'm really only experimenting here with a small amount of paint. We're just going to be working in our sketchbook here. But I really only grabbed a tiny little amount of black and mixed it to like an entire glob there of white. And it made my very first gray. It's a very light gray. I just used my pencil to divide my paper into thirds, and I'm just going to put as many shades of gray as I can above that line, and these are just going to be my first experiments in mixing grays. Just keep mixing up some grays. It takes a little while to mix each color, and that's because you really want a color that is all one color. You don't want to have white paint with black streaks in it. You want it to all be one value. And I said value because we're really not mixing colors here. We're mixing black and white to get a gray scale. The next thing we're going to do is make value scales. So right now we are just mixing values randomly. So far we've only been mixing paint by itself, white paint with black paint. We haven't used any water or medium yet. So I just grabbed the medium and I'm going to grab my clean palette knife. Scoop out a little bit and put it off to the side. Matte medium, it looks white, but when it dries, it'll be clear, transparent. So if we mix it in with the black and white paint, it shouldn't change the color at all. It just kind of adds body to it, and it helps it move a little bit more. Depending on which medium you buy, read the back. It'll tell you how transparent it is, how viscous it is. Is it, thick? Is it thin? Is it watery? Is it gel? But you can see a difference when you mix your paint with the medium. It has a little bit more coverage. So give that a try. I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but you're just mixing now your two colors of paint and whatever medium you bought. I'm just going to grab my pencil and write down that I did paint by itself on the left side and paint plus medium on the right side. And then when this is all dry, we're going to take a look at it and see if we can see a difference. So now we're going to do another row. This time it's going to be paint, water, and medium. Dip your brush in the water, and you already have medium mixed with all your paint, so all you're really doing here is adding a little water to it and seeing how that feels when you paint it on with a brush with paint that is a little bit more wet than it was when you were painting it on with the palette knife. You can still keep mixing if you want. Again, this is a mixing exercise, so we're looking for different values, but we're also thinking about consistency as we are applying it, but then also how it looks when both wet and dry. Is it fully covering the white of the paper, or is some of the white showing through? Just whatever you can notice. And I'm gonna speed this up again. Make another row, and this time try just paint and water. So since we have medium all over this palette paper, I'm just going to fold it in half, tear it out, and toss it, along with the paper towel that I used to get all of that acrylic paint off my brush before I go to rinse it. You want to get as much paint off your brush before you wash your brush in the sink, just to avoid clogging up your sink with acrylic paint. Again, when acrylic dries, it's almost like plastic, so you don't want that going down your sink. Okay, just a little more paint this time. 2 parts white to 1 part black. You saw how overpowering that black paint was, so just a tiny little bit of black here with the white. And we're mixing it with the palette knife, but we're going to brush it on with our wet paintbrush. Once this is completely dry, look and see if you can tell the difference between paint, paint with medium, paint with water and medium, and just paint and water.